We don't build cars in this country, not since the Ford factory in Cork closed in the 1980s. But in County Monaghan, they built forklifts that are in demand all over the world. This is the Architects of Business, Joe's weekly series of interviews with leading entrepreneurs in partnership with EY Entrepreneur of the Year. I'm Ty Genright, and today we'll hear from Martin McVicar of Combilift, who turned a childhood fascination into a billion-euro business. Martin, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us today. So how long have you been in this business for now?
Good afternoon, Tag. For Combilift, myself and my co-founder, Robert Moffat, we established Combilift 20 years ago. So it seems like a long time ago, but for me personally, it just seems like yesterday.
Why is that now? Is it because you're kind of carried along for the ride the whole time, or?
Well, if you take, Combilift, when we established the company 20 years ago, my background, I used to work for Moffat Engineering, which Robert Moffat and his sister Carol Moffat founded in 1986. So forklift trucks was all I knew. And when I was getting involved with Robert to establish Combilift, I was setting up a business in a project area that I really enjoyed. And since establishing Combilift, my work is really my hobby. So it doesn't feel like I've worked a day in my life. So it's hard to imagine it's 20 years ago. And I think that's important for anyone to say they're setting up a business or any career, that they choose a career that they're going to enjoy. And for me, making forklift trucks, it's like making like this little toy. It's like making Lego pieces. You know what? Any child would love to be at it every day of their life. So for me, it's really my work's my hobby.
Yeah, we're really grateful you brought in an example of what it is you build today. And I think this is kind of reflective of the passion that I'm guessing you have for forklifts. Where does that come from?
Well, my background, when I was growing up, I grew up on a family farm in North Monaghan. My parents are still farmers. And when I was at secondary school, after doing the intercert at that time, which is now the junior cert, of course, I had no intention to go back and do leaving cert. I wanted to leave school at the age of 15. But my parents coaxed me. They said, well, you know what, at least go back and do your leaving cert. And I had no intention of going to university. So I followed their advice. I decided I'll go back and do the leaving cert. But for me, is committing to go back and doing the leaving cert, I had to mentally think about, you know what, I'm going to spend another 2 years of my life doing something I didn't really want to do. But I says to myself, I'm going to make the most of it. So I focused on subjects at school that I really enjoyed. And for myself, mathematics, I was good at coming up to intercerts. So I liked maths, I like woodwork, using my hands, practical subjects. And that's really where my background is very much engineering design. And in terms of that has probably brought through. So after leaving school at the age of 17, I took a summer job in Moffat Engineering. I started on the factory floor. I was manually programming CNC machines, building forklift trucks at that time. So from the age of 17, I've really grown up around forklift trucks. And I think the background really came from growing up on a family farm. I love farm machinery, driving tractors, all kinds of machinery. And when something breaks down on the farm, I'd love to get stuck in to get it fixed. So I enjoyed the whole mechanic side and to understand how things work.
But there's a big difference, isn't there, between, being able to muck in and fix a piece of machinery and actually designing a complicated piece of kit like this from scratch. I mean, and you learned that kind of on the job, whereas I guess other people would have gone to university to do that.
Yeah, well, you know what, from my side, as I said earlier, I had no interest in going to university. Whatever it was about myself, I wanted to continue on the family farm at home. With the real ambition was that I could be in control of my own destiny, because I felt if I'm working on a family farm, I'm in control of what I do every day. I'm making my own decisions. So at that age, I didn't want to be necessarily going to university just to do some course for the sake of doing and not going for more education at that time, because I was the kind of person, whatever I learned, I like to put it into action. Now, that doesn't mean I don't believe in going to university. In fact, when I joined Moffat Engineering at the age of 17, I worked on the factory floor. I moved into the design office and different departments. But I actually then started to study through Open University at the age of 20. So I've actually...
you have done university education, it's just at home.
Yeah, I didn't complete. In fact, I studied modules relevant to mechanical engineering, and I've 6.5 credits, and you need 8 credits for a degree. So I don't actually have a full degree, but I could go back and finish it any day that I have time or if I desire to do it. But when I was doing my mechanical engineering modules through Open University, I was choosing modules that I really enjoyed. I wasn't choosing something just to get a degree in mechanical engineering. I was choosing modules that I could put into action while I was at work.
That's interesting, actually, when you think of it, because I remember when I was at school, there was this expectation that you'd always do a science, you'd always do a language, and one of the other things like business or geography, and I hated science. I didn't want to do any science. I mean, were you selective like that at school in terms of picking the things that you wanted to do to help you build things like this?
Yeah, I definitely was. And even at a young age, even before the intercert, I had to make a decision. My secondary school was St. McCartn's College in Monaghan. And for intercert, I had to make a decision. Do I do woodwork or do I do science? Personally, I did like science because I liked the mathematics of physics, etc. But I made the choice to do woodwork for intercert. But then whenever my parents encouraged me to go back and do the leaving cert, I was ambitious in that I wanted to do honours physics because I liked maths. I liked, the practicality of physics and the mathematics of physics. But naturally, St. McCartn's College said to me, well, we can't put you into the honours physics because you didn't do science for your intercert. And anyone that knows me today, when someone tells me something's not possible, that really is a catalyst for me to prove that it is possible. So I remember when I went to go in and start my fourth year, which would be the start of the Leaving Cert program as such, I remember they put me into ordinary levels physics, but I spoke to my teacher and I said, I want to meet the honours physics teacher. So I actually met the two of them together. So I met the ordinary levels physics teacher and the honours level physics teacher. And I made a deal with them, if you want to say. I made an agreement with them that if I could be the best in the class at Christmas at physics in the ordinary level subject, they would have to move me into the higher level physics course. And it goes without saying, I made sure I was the best at physics to get into the higher level. And I went on, I had to get an A in honours physics in the Leaving Cert.
Is that the first example of kind of wheeler dealing that you can remember? That kind of,
stand out, yeah.
It suggests a bit of entrepreneurial flair as well as somebody who's interested in engineering.
Yeah, it's probably, from an education was the first time, but at home, because I was growing up on a family farm, I enjoyed the daking and deal of cattle, bringing cattle to the mart, even making deals outside the mart gates, buying and selling. So I was always a kind of person, I like to make a deal, but it for me is a deal needs to be a win-win for both sides. And what I felt for that deal of deciding to do honours physics, it was a win for me, but it was a win for the school as well. So in one sense, I'm not a person that just wants it to be a win from my side, because the reality is for anything to be sustainable, it needs to be a win from both sides. But I am a kind of person, I like making deals, but I like making them happen that both parties feel it was a good deal all around.
So you worked hard to make sure you knew the right things to set you up for that career in engineering with Moffat. Tell me about your early years then, working full-time with Moffat, getting to know the business, getting to know how to build these things and how to sell them.
Yeah. So when I left school in June, done the Leaving Cert, I joined Moffat Engineering in July to take up a summer job. And in fact, it was my career guidance counsellor in St. McCartn's College that encouraged me. Well, not only did they encourage me to try and take up a summer job, but Pádraig Duffy, he encouraged me to apply for a degree in mechanical engineering. Not did he encourage me, he sort of forced me. He says, you need to put an application in for engineering because that's where your strengths are. So I made an application to UCD and to Queen's, and I got placement to do mechanical engineering in both of them. But I had no interest in going to university. So as a last resort, he probably said, well, why don't you take up a summer job in Moffat Engineering, thinking that might encourage me to go to university. It did encourage me to go into engineering, but it didn't encourage me to go to university. So I started in July that year. I started on the factory floor. I was using manual equipment. Then I started to program CNC machines for cutting steel, drilling, etc. But I always had a desire to move into designing equipment, because my strengths at secondary school were technical drawing, construction studies, maths, physics. So they were all in that area of design. And the owners of Moffat Engineering at that time was Jim McAdam, Robert Moffat and Carol Moffat. And I said, I would like to move into the design office. And one of the first projects, the director, Jim McAdam, coming up to Christmas that year, so I was on the factory floor for about 5 months. He said, we're designing a new hydraulic manifold for a Moffat mounted truck mounted forklift. Would you like to do the design on it and show us what you're capable of? So I took these hydraulic valves home and actually that weekend done if you want to call it an engineering drawing, a schematic drawing showing how it would work and how we could put it all together. So when I came back in on the Monday, pretty much they said, well, we'll give you an opportunity in the design office, but you don't know how to use AutoCAD, which is computer-aided design. I said, I don't mind. I'll stay on the factory floor for another month. I learned to use AutoCAD in the evening. So every evening I would go up to the design office, start to use CAD, computer-aided design. So they moved me into the design office by like January, February. So probably 6 months on the factory floor I was moved into the design office as a mechanical engineer designing the Moffat mounted truck mounted forklift.
So what are the things that people who aren't experts in forklifts need to know about the challenges of designing a forklift?
You know what I often say about a business? Sometimes you need to know a certain amount about the business venture you're getting into, but I think it's a mistake. If you know too much about it, you'll convince yourself, you know what, there's so much competition there, it's too risky, how are you going to differentiate yourself? So I find is you need to know what the base ground rules of where you're entering, but the reality is you need to come up with something that's innovative, different to what other people have out there. And I suppose some of the basic guide rules I'd suggest about forklift truck or any engineering is get involved in a venture that you enjoy. And for me, designing forklift trucks like Combilift products, it is like putting Lego together. So not only designing it, you're putting prototypes together, you're testing it, but you need to be, in my opinion, it needs to be something you enjoy, and it's the same with any business.
One of the incredible parts of your story that I really didn't appreciate before I, read up a bit about you before we met. We aren't terribly well known in this country for kind of exporting big bits of engineering kit, as it were. We used to build cars back in the 80s for Ford, and that was really just assembly. And the story of not just one, but two big forklift producers in Monaghan, and you guys exporting all over the world is really quite incredible.
Yeah, and you know what? When you grow up on it, it doesn't seem that incredible to us because it just seems like normal to us. But I think we're not the only example. Across Ireland as a country, there is a lot of manufacturing that takes place in the rural counties around Ireland. And that can be from other engineering companies. It can be McHale Engineering in Galway, Dairy Master in Kerry, Denison Trailers. There's multiple engineering companies spread around all over Ireland, not just Combilift. But what I find when you grow up on a family farm and you're interested in machinery, moving into manufacturing equipment is a very easy stepping stone. And for me personally, it was my experience within Moffat Engineering that encouraged me to move into the forklift business. And not only the experience within Moffat Engineering, but when I was there, I was heading up the engineering R&D department. I got a lot of travel experience. So I was traveling to many export markets, very much from a technical sales support. And that experience of traveling to international markets really opened my vision as to the potential of the world market there for what anyone produces. Because if you don't travel abroad, you don't realise the scale of the market opportunities out there. And for when we established Combilift, myself and Robert, we didn't establish it to make forklift trucks just for Ireland. We established it to be focused on export from day one. And in fact, in 1998, the year we established the company, we produced 18 Combilift forklift trucks. And of the 18 we produced, 17 were exported out of Ireland year one. And we've gone on today. Today we export actively to 85 countries around the world.
So why were you so determined when you did branch out by yourself to target the export market so aggressively? I mean, what was it about your time at Moffat that made you think, actually, I want to do this for myself?
You know what? For my side, I always wanted to move into a business venture of my own. But the great thing I worked in Moffat Engineering from the age 17 for 9 years. And it was a privately owned company. And whatever work I put in, I was recognised. It was a private business. So, the hard grind I was putting in, I was getting recognised for it. It was a family owned business. But in September 1997, the Moffat business was sold to Powerscreen, which was a public company. And for me, that was the immediate catalyst. I had no intention to work for a public company where I may only be counted as a number in the organisation. So that was the catalyst. Now's my time to do something on my own. Robert Moffat, who was one of the business partners that owned Moffat Engineering before, he was involved in the sale of Moffat. He always wanted to get back into business. So myself and Robert got together very quickly. So from the sale of Moffat in September 1997, we had established Combilift in March 1998. So.
Wow. So in many ways, while you kind of owed a lot to the Moffat family for your education in this field, once their firm got taken over, it was almost like you were free to branch out. All your loyalties were kind of
dispensed, yeah. And it is interesting because I know in Moffat Engineering, I was being rewarded for the efforts I was doing. But I know whenever I handed my notice into Periscreen to say I'm leaving, to do something on my own, they actually doubled my salary to stay. But that didn't matter in the slightest. I wasn't there for the money. I wanted to do something on my own. So from my side, there was no turning back, in terms of I wanted to do something, and that was the opportunity we wanted to do. So.
Did anyone kind of have a word in your ear and say, here, hang on for a second, they've promised to double your salary, and it is a big company, maybe there's prospects to grow in it. Was there any seed of doubt there at all?
You know what? Family members would be the ones who would create doubt, when you would tell them that. But for me, I was not given it any second option. I mean, I had decided I was leaving to do my own thing, but of course there was a number of my family members, I didn't tell them that circumstances. I'd tell them now afterwards and they'd laugh about it, but I knew if I told them that at that time, they would probably try and convince me to stay. But and it's good to look back and
do you think, is there a little bit more of a tendency to taking the safe job in this country versus others? Yeah,
there probably is, but you know what, circumstances probably force people to take them safe opportunities because you know what, the cost of living, can they take the risk to leave a job to set up a business? When I was involved with Robert setting up Combilift, I was at the age 26. I had no mortgages, I had no wife, no family. So it's a lot easier making a decision when you're a single person and you'd no ties as such. I do understand when people have family and that, it's a lot harder to move out of that safe environment to take the gamble to get involved in a set-up business.
So how did you get started? How did you get Combilift off the ground?
Well, from myself and Robert got together, we took on an experienced engineer who was working in Moffat Engineering, and from the three of us pretty much sitting around a drawing board, or if you want to say around a table, we come up with the basic layout of the product. And by August 1998, we had already completed 4 trucks. So we started the business in March, and by August we had actually 4 trucks produced. But the big plus we had was not only did we experience making forklift trucks, but we knew a lot of the suppliers of components. So we could lift the phone and we ring a hydraulic supplier like Bosch Rexroth. We need a hydraulic pump. We need an engine. So we knew the people to contact to make the product. And very much we were designing a forklift truck that was different to a Moffat Mountie to do different capability. And in terms of the Moffat Mountie forklift, that was a product that was designed for doing deliveries. To be transported in the back of a trailer. It would be used to offload trucks and trailers. With the Combilift product, we've designed a vehicle that's multi-directional. So it's a forklift truck that can travel forward and back like a regular forklift truck. The wheels turn and can travel left and right.
And why was that such a game changer? Just play that out for us as to why somebody would find that as a really compelling selling point.
Do you not find it compelling?
I don't understand it because I'm not in that business,
not the business,
Yeah.
But I think what we did is we focused on a niche. Like the reality is there's more than 200 producers of forklift trucks worldwide. And we knew that if we make regular forklift trucks, we're not going to succeed manufacturing in Ireland, competing with all the other big players. Toyota make forklift trucks, Nissan make forklift trucks, Mitsubishi forklift trucks. So we wouldn't compete with them big brands and big players. So what was unique was we focused on developing a Combilift forklift that could be used to handle long products more efficiently and safely. And that's the big benefit, because if you take, with the Combilift truck, we can lift long goods, so that can be packs of timber, steel, anything, and we can travel laterally left and right. We can also turn the wheels and travel forward and back. So that unique feature that we could move long products more safely, because it's much safer to travel with long goods sidewards than it is to try and lift it up and over aeroplane mode. And the saving space and the safety was the two big benefits we were bringing to our clients.
Was anyone else doing that at the time?
There was no one else making a multi-directional forklift truck, but there was other players in Europe that were making, we would call, side loaders. So there was forklifts on the market that would travel left and right. And of course, there was a lot of producers making forklift trucks that went front and back. But our unique proposition was we designed a forklift truck that could go in, if you want to call it, in 4 directions.
Has anyone copied you since?
We've had a number of companies copy and actually didn't succeed and sort of went out of business. And we do have a couple of competitors. But thankfully, if we add up all our competition in the multi-directional business, the producers that make side loaders, our volume and output today is more than double of all our competitors put together. So, you know, in the long load handling market, Combilift is the dominant player worldwide.
It's quite interesting that when you sat down with that blank piece of paper and started to sketch out your ideas, you very much had the kind of the signature product of your previous employers in mind. What was that like as a kind of a motivational, just something to motivate you to do something different?
In fact, even my business partner, Robert Moffat, who was one of the founders of the Moffat business, I remember distinctly in the early stages of Combilift saying, you know what, we're confident, and me personally as well, that we'll be fit to grow this Combilift business, that it's going to be a bigger business than the Moffat business ever was. So that was a sort of a target, or if you want to call a goal that we wanted to achieve, that we could grow this business to be a company that was bigger than the Moffat business had been.
So what were the major milestones for you? I mean, at what stages were you cracking open bottles of champagne and saying, we've really done something here?
In fact, anyone that knows me, I don't traditionally drink champagne, so I haven't opened many bottles of champagne.
Well, whatever you prefer to open when you're celebrating.
But I think, you know, what really gives me personally a kick, and Robert as well, but what really gives a kick is to see satisfied customers. So if I can walk into a builder's yard or a steel yard and you see a Combilift forklift operating that solved that customer's handling needs, that gives me as much thrill as anything else. But going back in terms of the milestones, like, you know, we started the business in 98. It was export focused, and creating that brand name, that to get it known worldwide, it took a lot of investment in exhibiting our forklift trucks at many trade shows worldwide, trying to get reference customers in different markets. But what we found the most successful was, I know most companies, when they have a product to sell, they go to a new market, they appoint a dealer or a distributor to sell it. Our first approach is, when we go to a new market, is we're not first looking for a dealer, we're looking for customers, end users. So we will actually get on the ground, find a number of reference customers that will commit to buying the product, and then we'll find the distributor afterwards, because we don't have enough time to find all the customers ourselves. But if we can get a few good reference customers on the ground, the dealers will then want to sell our product, and then they'll be more successful.
You've had a very successful story. You have a very successful story to tell. But I guess there must have been some low points along the way. No story can be without some low points. What stand out for you in your memory?
Like, in the history of Combilift over the last 20 years, the one day that stands out for me is when we were forced, if you want to call it, to make redundancies in the business. So during the downturn in 2008, 2009, most companies, like with that recession, it didn't just hit Ireland, it hit most countries around the world. So customers that would be traditionally buying Combilift forklift trucks, not only were they stopping to invest to buy forklift trucks, they were actually selling off some of their old forklift trucks because they didn't need them. And because our equipment was so focused on the building material industry, you know, the steel, the construction, as we all know, in that downturn, construction pretty much took a drop. In our experience, took a drop. In all the markets we exported in, the only one exception that stands out was Australia. That economy still kept through that downturn pretty good. But because of the downturn 08-09, we had about 200 employees in 2008. We had a reduction in our business of 26% in early 09. And we actually, in March 2009, we made 43 redundancies in the one day. And I personally sat across a table in front of them, 43 people. And of course, a number of them I would have worked, or they would have worked very closely with me in the early 10 years of Combilift. So I knew them not only just within work personally, and sitting across the table, making people that, you know, that has helped to get the business where it was. Redundant was the toughest day in the history for a Combilift business for me personally, or probably in the toughest day in my lifetime, I would say. Really.
43 people. I mean, I would imagine there was a mixture of emotions on their part as well. Yeah. Some understanding, I guess, of the situation, but maybe others less so.
Yeah, I agree. And the only thing that was a little bit positive at that time was we were not the only company that was contracting. I mean, most people in Ireland realise this downturn, everywhere suffering. So people knew something was going to need to change. But of course, the 43 people we made redundant that morning, they didn't expect they were going to be made redundant. So naturally, it was a shock to most of them. And like every business, we needed to curtail our costs when business was down. So the same day, we introduced a 10% wage reduction to all our other employees. So in some ways, but it meant people that were still with Combilift, they felt, grateful. We still have a job. Combilift, we're trying to sort of pretty much cut our cloth to survive through the recession, because I think the worst thing for any business is to try and keep trading while financially you're struggling to keep trading, because it's more, you have to really look at the long term.
Is it harder though to make those kind of decisions when you're a company such as yours that is really ingrained within one community? Because after you had that conversation with them on whatever it was, a Monday or a Tuesday, you won't have to look them in the eye in the main street that weekend.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I grew up in a local community of the people we employ today. We employ now 550 people in Monaghan, and they're very much living in that local community surrounding area. So you're absolutely right. Them people that were made redundant, I met a number of them the following weeks. And you know what? How do you keep a conversation going? I would say on a positive side, are the 43 people made redundant, majority of them have come back. We've re-employed them since the downturn, so at least they're back working for Combilift. And there are a number of employees today is very much, you could say, is 3 times the quantity that we had before the downturn. So at least people in the local community appreciate, well, Combilift, we're continuing to grow, we're employing people. But that was definitely the toughest day that sticks out.
So Martin, all the big pop stars in the world want to crack America. How did you do it?
Well, in fact, I was going to say, we've been successful in America. And I would say the US was one of our early export markets. Not our first, but it was about our fifth export market we targeted. And I remember distinctively, we started the business in 1998. In 1999, I flew out to the States and I attended an exhibition called MetalCon in Cincinnati, Ohio. That exhibition was very targeted around companies manufacturing metal roofing for buildings and cladding. And I walked that trade show, so I didn't book a booth. I walked the trade show, spotted some potential clients that could be users of Combilift products, went on some of the stands, and as most of us know, everyone that's exhibiting are there to sell their products, so they're not there to buy. But lucky enough, I ended up making a good dialogue with one company called Simco, Southeastern Metal Manufacturing. And they were still based in Jacksonville, Florida. So the gentleman I met, I remember his name clearly, Jim Horton, and built up a good dialogue with him, showed him on a video the benefits of our product. And within 6 weeks, we had our first order in the United States. So that was our first reference start. Following that, anytime I went to the States, I always my travel plans was always to get to Jacksonville, Florida, make sure that client's happy, and then try and find another one. So that's pretty much where we started, with 1 or 2 reference customers in different areas. And then eventually dealers started to want to sell our product. But one thing I loved about doing business in the States, of course, we all know they speak a similar language.
Somewhat similar. Anyway.
Somewhat similar. And as we all know, most people like to deal and work with Irish people, communicate with Irish people. So, the gift of the gab of the Irish does really work in the United States. But the other thing that I found really interesting was in the US, companies are less conservative than in some other markets. Because as you can imagine, Combilift, we made an innovative product. Is someone going to take the gamble to buy one of these first products in the United States? Like I know some of my early trips to Canada, it was a lot tougher battle to find our first client in Canada. The Canadian market, the Canadians generally are more conservative than the US. So what we found with the US, they're very open to products that's going to make their business more competitive. But the other big benefit that I realised very early on that our product was bringing for our US clients, it allowed our customers that's handling long products to handle their long products more safely. And that really is a real USP that worked really well in the United States.
But it is, as I was saying earlier, it is the biggest single economy in the world. So actually making inroads there, how significant was that for Combilift?
It's probably like another stepping stone at that stage. But for Combilift as a business, even though we've been growing in the United States this last 18, 19 years, the United States is a big target growth market for us. Our UK is our number one export market. The United States is our number two. But I'm pretty confident the next year or two, well, even in the next year, the United States is going to be our largest export market, even on the assumption the UK market still continues to thrive post-Brexit.
Well, you mentioned Brexit, and when you talk about the US being your kind of your target biggest export market, I think of President Trump and the trade tariffs which he's threatening to bring in. Does that kind of worry you at all?
It doesn't, because the products we're manufacturing, we're making very innovative products. And the one big plus I find of the Trump administration, they're very pro-business. So most of the Combilift clients in the United States are Trump supporters. And because he's very much pro-businesses, businesses are willing to invest. So we've seen some massive growth in the US business this year. And I know there is some negativity regarding the tariffs that have been introduced, but the reality is a lot of people in the US are looking at it as a way to grow domestic manufacturing. And for Combilift is the more domestic manufacturing takes place in the United States, the more needs there's going to be for Combilift trucks in the United States.
What if they choose an American forklift instead?
Well, that's true. The only thing is, from Combilift point of view, we have a number of patents on how we've designed our product. So it's not that easy for any competitor to start to manufacture in the US or in other markets either.
So you've obviously, and we were talking about it earlier, always demonstrated a real commitment to your home place, the factories in Monaghan. Have you ever looked into whether it could be maybe cheaper or more strategic to build your forklifts elsewhere?
Well, I've grown up in Monaghan, and Robert, my business partner's grown up in Monaghan, and we very much, from establishing the business in our local community, we've committed 3 years ago that we would actually start to build a new manufacturing plant in Monaghan. So in April this year, we officially opened a new manufacturing plant on the Monaghan bypass. And this manufacturing plant, we acquired 100 acres of land. We've built a manufacturing facility that covers 500,000 square feet, which would be the equivalent of about 3.5 Crow Park football pitches under roof. It's one of the largest single manufacturing plants in Ireland under one roof. So we've committed over 50 million of an investment in this plant. So we're very committed to continue to grow on our business in Ireland.
But why are you so committed to growing it in Ireland?
In fact, a lot of it's built around our expertise we've built up in the community. Designing these products, manufacturing them, assembling them. We're not making commodity widgets. We're making custom build forklift trucks. So when you visit the Combilift plant, you won't see, there's very few forklifts are built the same. They're built around individual requirements. And we like to think we've set this manufacturing plant that we can mass produce customized products. And as long as we can keep that customization possibility, there's no reason why we can't sustain this in Ireland, because a cheap manufacturing country like maybe China or elsewhere, they're going to be only interested in producing high volume of the same. And that's not really our target market. We're manufacturing solution products that saves our clients space.
What about the other conditions for doing business in this country? Things like, tax, access to finance. How has that served you down through the years?
Yeah, I mean, I've grown up where the corporation tax, as we all know, is very attractive in Ireland. But I think in terms of availability of finance, it hasn't really been a concern for Combilift. We have very much grown our business from retained profits in the company. So we're not actively out looking for finance. And the main reason for that is we are continually growing at a rate of about 15-20% per year. So our target growth rate is to double over the next 5 years. And as long as we can continue to make innovative products that we can charge a premium for it, there's no reason why we can't fund that out of retained earnings.
And is that a decision that you kind of decided you wanted to make, or policy you wanted to implement? Because a lot of the entrepreneurs who kind of come sit in that chair there tell me that, when they go to banks with an idea, they're not able to get the finance for it, because they do find that Irish banks are a bit more risk averse.
Yeah, and that's true with most entrepreneurs. I know a lot of entrepreneurs are ambitious so that they're willing to borrow money to buy businesses, to grow businesses. I've grown up in a culture where I personally don't go to a bank to borrow money unless I think I can afford it. So the first car I bought, I had money saved before I bought it. And that culture sort of has brought me up. The other thing that actually has encouraged me as a business owner, through Enterprise Ireland, about 3 years ago, Enterprise Ireland put together a mid-tier engineering group of companies and organised a 2-day event to Germany. And we visited 4 or 5 large manufacturing companies in Germany. These are companies that are close to like €1 billion turnover. And what is amazing, when you look at some of the largest manufacturing companies in Germany that have been there for years, they have no bank borrowings. They're very much focused on growing their business that is a sustainable growth. Now, I know other businesses like the service industry is different. It's more faster pace. But when we're making physical products, it's much more sustainable if we don't have to answer to a bank in terms of making decisions. Do we invest in new products? Do we invest in new salespeople, new markets? So we're very much more in control of our own destiny.
So when you look at where you are now, what you've achieved, and you contrast that with that kind of little Martin on the farm, looking at the machinery and being fascinated by it, did you ever in your wildest dreams at that stage imagine you'd get to where you are today?
In some ways, I still like to think that I'm still like that little Martin. In fact, Combilift is very much in my blood, but I still have so much enjoyment for farming. So I still graze some cattle for the summer. So I'm still a hobby farmer. It's not our main line of business, but I really enjoy the farming, and it's a great distraction to get away from the day-to-day of the business. So in one sense, even though when I say distraction, for me, my business is my hobby, but my farming's a hobby. So it all ties together.
I know farmers. There's farmers in my family. I don't know an awful lot about farming, and they find that looking after cattle is a 24-hour day job. How do you manage it as a hobby?
Well, I take the easy way out. I really only a summer farmer. I buy weanling calves in the spring, and I only graze them. And I've actually just sold them. They're being sold this weekend. So I don't winter them. So I don't keep them in a house. So I make it very easy.
Right. So it's just for the best bits of it.
Of the summer,
it's like being a grandparent and giving the kid back.
Give the kid back
at the end of the day. You know what I mean? What kind of strength, I suppose, have you found from other business people in the country? People that you've met even through the EOY network. What things have you borrowed from them, as it were, in terms of things that you've applied to the business?
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, if you take in terms of Combilift, at the age of 29, I was lucky enough to be recognised by Ernst & Young as the Entrepreneur of the Year in Ireland at the age of 29. But with EOY, they organised me to go out to California. I took a trip to Brazil, been to Monte Carlo, and meeting other entrepreneurs in different markets has really given me a perspective that even though we're growing our business, there's so much opportunity for growth out there. And it has actually encouraged me to be more ambitious. So that network of EOY people, not just in Ireland, but around the world, sort of opens your perspective as to how possible it is to scale a business. And for me, if you take in terms of probably another area that really helped me was I actually also, through Enterprise Ireland, I attended Stanford University, where they had organised a course in terms of leadership for growth. So I did a 3-week stint in Stanford University, and that was very good. But I have to find the network of events with EOY is great to sort of bounce ideas, because we all know in business we all have challenges. And sometimes the challenge I have today, someone else has solved it yesterday. So that great community of network is very valuable.
So of all the lessons you've learned down through the years through meeting other entrepreneurs, are there any ones in particular that stand out for you?
I'm a kind of person, some people say, who's your mentor, or, who do you try to follow? For me personally, I have many mentors, and I mean, I could list you 50 people that I would really put value on meeting and their opinion. And I'm the kind of person where I'm not afraid to network, so I really tap into different people. And for Combilift as a business, we don't really have a very structured board of directors. There's myself and Robert Moffat. But what I find is our non-executive directors are people that I meet through events like EOI and other organisations, because the reality is a non-executive director is someone you're asking for their opinion. And I find when you're involved in different networks, there's so many people out there that have so much valuable experience that not only can help you to grow your business, but even can help you to enter new markets, etc.
And the general kind of momentum within industry in general these days is automation. I wonder, are you guys looking at kind of self-driving forklifts yet?
No, and it's interesting you should say that, because today we've more than 40,000 Combilift vehicles operating worldwide, and a number of our clients are now pushing us to say, "What can you bring us a Combilift truck that's self-driving?" Good example is Eddie Stobart Distribution in the UK. They operate more than 100 of our vehicles, and they want it to be automated. So at this stage, we're embarking on a research and development project to develop Combilift vehicles that are going to be fully automatic driving. So we're confident within the next 2 years, we're going to have fully automated forklifts available for our customers within Europe and the United States, because that's really where the drive is coming for us, to remove the operator where it's not critical. And the great thing about the automation technology that's out there today, I know we hear a lot in the car and the automotive business, but the reality is that going to become mainstream? We're confident in the forklift truck industry. Automation can become mainstream, because when someone buys a forklift truck, it goes into the client's warehouse, and it's in a very contained environment compared to someone that's driving a car on a public road. So we're pretty confident that automation is definitely going to happen in the near future.
And is there a race between you and other forklift manufacturers to achieve that?
Yeah, there's other forklift companies have been playing at this for a while, using technology which is sensors and mirrors. But we're trying to develop our own software, which is very much like GPS controlled. Because as we all know with GPS, that can control a vehicle outdoor, but GPS cannot control a vehicle indoor in a warehouse. So we're trying to imitate what GPS can do in an indoor environment. And if we can crack that, there's no reason why that can't be the next major milestone for the growth of Combilift in future years.
So what's next for Combilift and for you? I mean, what is the next milestone you're looking to, or the next target you want to achieve?
Well, for Combilift, I mean, our ambition at the moment is we've built this new manufacturing plant. Our target is to double the business over the next 5 years. And no matter which day you meet me, so if you meet me in a year's time, my target's still going to be to double in the following 5 years. So it's a very simple message. Our employees know it, our suppliers know it, and our customers know it. And that eventually is going to hopefully get us to $1 billion business in the short future.
Wow, that's quite a milestone to achieve. Could you get there quicker though if you went on a different route? You know, a different type of financing, maybe floating the company or attracting other types of investment?
You know what? The answer is probably yes, or could be yes. But for us, is floating a business, I think, is very valuable if you need cash to grow it. For Combilift, because we're manufacturing innovative products, it's very much building up that expertise is the challenge. So I think even if someone writes a blank check, it's not going to necessarily scale the business overnight. And because of the market we're in, we're manufacturing products that are solution-based. A lot of the new Combilifts we're bringing to market, it's not just us sitting in a dark room thinking what the next one will look like. They're listening to our customers, listening to our customers' challenges, and we're designing products to solve their material handling needs. And that's really going to continue to grow our business in the future. As long as we listen to our customers, there's no reason why we can't be the $1 billion company in the near future.
It's rare enough that you meet someone who's achieved so much with something that was really a childhood passion or a hobby. Are there days where you kind of get sick of the sight of forklifts?
Absolutely not. But what I would say is I'm not totally blinkered with forklifts. I enjoy machinery of any kind. So if there's an agricultural trade show in Germany, like Agritechnik, which is the biggest one worldwide for agricultural machinery, I love going there because I find there's so much cross technology between different products. And as we all know, there's more electronics now incorporated into cars, more electronics in forklift trucks. Like we make diesel vehicles, make LPG and electric. And the diesel Combilift vehicles now have so much electronics in it. And we can learn so much from an agricultural business. The agricultural business can learn from the forklift business. So I'm very open to any kind of machinery. But of course, Combilift is, we often say with the brand green, green's running through my blood. So.
It feels like you're never gonna hang up your I don't know what you wear, your white coat or your designer's cap or anything like that. I mean, are you going to be clinging on to the reins of this business for a long time?
Well, I don't have a written agreement, but with myself and Robert, I personally have made a verbal agreement to Combilift that I want to commit 50 years of my life to the Combilift business if my health is sustainable. So that means I won't be retiring for another 30 years. So.
It's an interesting round figure.
Yeah.
Well, Godspeed to you. Martin McVicar, thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Tag.
Thanks for joining us today on The Architects of Business. Thanks to our guest, Martin McVicar, our producer, Patrick Hohey, and all of the team here at JOE. Our programme is made in partnership with EY Entrepreneur of the Year. Go to EY.ie to learn more about the finalists for this year. And don't miss out on past or indeed future shows by subscribing for free on iTunes, on your favourite Android podcast app, or you can watch the show on YouTube. Check out some of JOE's other podcasts too, including our brand new show, The House of Rugby. I'm Ty Genright. Thank you so much for being with us this week, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.